Spine-tingling encounters in the woods that will keep you up all night. The lure of silence. There's a kind of quiet you can only find deep in the woods, miles from the nearest road, where the only sounds are the ones that belong there. It's not an empty silence. It's full of the wind whispering through the pines, the distant chatter of a squirrel, and the steady thump of your own heart. That's the peace Alex was looking for. Alex was an experienced hiker. For him, the wilderness wasn't something to conquer. It was a place to reconnect. His city life was a constant flood of noise, deadlines, and screens. The woods were his escape. So, when he stumbled upon a little-known trail on an old forestry map, one that promised miles of untouched, old-growth forest, he packed his gear for a long solo hike. He started just after dawn. The air was crisp, tasting of pine and damp earth. For the first few hours, everything was perfect. Sunlight streamed through the canopy, painting the forest floor with shifting light. The trail was faint, more of a suggestion than a path, and that's exactly how he liked it. It meant he was truly alone. He could feel the knots of stress in his shoulders finally starting to loosen. He was in his element, moving with a steady pace, feeling the familiar burn in his legs and the cool air in his lungs. This was freedom. He paused for a drink, leaning against a massive fallen tree, and smiled. The silence was perfect. But some silences are a lie. Sometimes, the quietest places hide the loudest fears, and sometimes, you're only alone until you're not. The first wrong note. It was around noon when Alex first felt it. It wasn't a sound, not yet. It was just a shift in the air, like the entire forest suddenly went on alert. That perfect, peaceful silence he'd been enjoying now felt heavy. He shook his head, took another sip of water. Just your mind playing tricks, he told himself. Too much quiet can make you jumpy. He pushed on, but now he was listening, really listening. And that's when he heard it. A single, sharp crack. The sound of a heavy foot snapping a dry twig. It came from somewhere off to his right, deep in the thick undergrowth. He froze, scanning the trees. A deer, probably. Maybe a bear, though he hadn't seen any tracks. He waited, motionless, for another sound, another sign of life. Nothing. The forest was still again, but it was a different kind of stillness now. It was the silence of something holding its breath. He started walking again, a little faster this time. But a few minutes later, another sound started. Not a crack, but a soft, rhythmic thump. 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 It was slow, deliberate, and it seemed to be keeping pace with him. A cold dread crept up his spine. This was different. Animals don't walk like that. Their movements are random. This was methodical. He stopped dead in his tracks. The thumping stopped with him. The blood ran cold in his veins. Every scary story he'd ever dismissed suddenly felt very, very real. He stood there for what felt like an hour, straining his ears, every nerve on fire. The woods were dead quiet. No birds, no insects, nothing. It was as if the entire forest was listening right along with him. He took one slow, deliberate step. From the trees to his right, a single matching thump answered him. He wasn't imagining it. Something was in there, mirroring his every move. The stalker in the shadows. A switch flipped in Alex's mind. The peaceful hiker vanished, replaced by a man whose instincts were screaming that he was now prey. He slowly turned his head, trying to see through the tangled shadows. Nothing. He called out, his voice sounding pathetic and small. Hello? Is anyone there? Only the suffocating silence answered. He started walking again, much faster now. The thumping returned, quicker this time, matching his panicked rhythm. And then the smell hit him, a wave of foulness so potent it made him gag. It wasn't the smell of a dead animal. It was a thick, musky, almost coppery odor. The smell of something fundamentally wrong. The smell of a predator he couldn't name. Fear was a physical thing now, a metallic taste in his mouth. He was hours from his car, and the end of the trail was just as far. He was trapped. He ditched any attempt at a quiet hike and started jogging, his pack thudding against his back. Behind him, the thumping stopped and was replaced by something much worse. A heavy, crashing sound. Whatever was following him wasn't being sneaky anymore. It was plowing through the dense woods with incredible force, the sound of snapping branches getting closer with terrifying speed. It was big, powerful, and fast. Alex could hear its breathing now, a low, guttural rasp, like air being sucked through a wet, diseased lung. It was a hungry sound. He ran. He wasn't on a trail anymore, just fleeing from that sound, that smell, from the absolute terror of being hunted. The trees that had been his sanctuary were now a cage, their shadows like claws reaching for him. That feeling of being hunted is one of our deepest fears, a terror that kicks logic to the curb. If stories like this get your heart racing, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Alex, who was running for his life and about to come face to face with his hunter. Adrenaline and pure terror fueled Alex's flight. He risked a single glance over his shoulder and saw nothing but a blur of green and brown. But he could feel its presence, a wave of malice so real it felt like it was pressing on his back. He could feel its size, its weight as it tore through the woods. He burst into a small clearing, a brief escape from the claustrophobic trees. He thought he could gain some ground, but just as his feet hit the grass, the sound he'd been running from finally erupted from the tree line. It was a roar, but that word is too small. It was a soul-shattering blast of sound that was equal parts rage and hunger. It vibrated up from the ground, through the soles of his boots, and into his bones. It was a sound that didn't belong in this world, an ancient declaration of dominance and pure hatred. The force of it literally staggered him. He stumbled, his ankle twisted, and he fell hard. Pain shot up his leg, but the terror drowned it out. He scrambled backward on his hands and knees, his eyes locked on the spot where the sound came from. He couldn't breathe. This was it. This was how he died, torn apart by something he couldn't even name, in a place no one would ever find him. The crashing sounds got louder, closer. It was right there, just inside the shadows of the trees. He heard a low growl, a wet, guttural clicking. He squeezed his eyes shut, bracing for the impact. He thought of his life, his family, everything he'd never see again. Then the roaring stopped, replaced by a heavy, waiting silence. The escape and the aftermath. The attack never came. After a few seconds that felt like a lifetime, Alex dared to open his eyes. The tree line was still. The sound was gone. Why did it stop? He didn't wait for an answer. Ignoring the fire in his ankle, he got to his feet and somehow ran again, driven by a fear so deep it had become its own fuel. He didn't know how long he ran. The sun was setting, plunging the woods into a dark, threatening twilight when he finally saw a landmark he recognized, a bizarrely shaped rock formation near the trailhead. His car wasn't far. Hope, a feeling he thought was gone forever, flickered back to life. He burst from the woods into the small gravel parking lot. His car, a beautiful, boring symbol of safety. His hands shook so badly he could barely get the key in the lock. He threw himself inside, slammed the door, and mashed the lock button. Only then did he look back at the edge of the forest, and for one heart-stopping second, he saw it. Not clearly, just a silhouette against the last dying light. It was tall, impossibly tall, and broad. The shape was vaguely human, but grotesquely wrong. It stood perfectly still right at the edge of the woods, just watching him. No sound, no movement, just a massive, silent presence. Then, as if it had seen enough, it stepped back into the impenetrable darkness and was gone. Alex didn't hesitate. He jammed the key in the ignition, floored it, and peeled out of the lot. He drove for an hour, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, before he finally had to pull over, his whole body shaking uncontrollably. Alex never went hiking again. He sold his gear and treated the woods like they were radioactive. The encounter left him with more than a sprained ankle. It left a scar on his soul. He was haunted by the memory of those pacing footsteps, that foul smell, and most of all, that roar. He tried to tell a few people, but how do you explain something that defies all rational explanation? The world is full of wild, remote places that hold ancient secrets. Alex's story echoes the countless reports collected for decades by organizations like the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, BFRO, which document sightings of large, hair-covered, human-like animals. Legends from Native American cultures speak of creatures like the Wendigo and the Skinwalker, beings associated with cannibalism, dark magic, and the ability to mimic their prey. While there is no scientific proof of these creatures, reports of strange howls, methodical footsteps, and fleeting sightings continue to surface from deep in the woods, with some sightings happening as recently as 2025. Alex's story is a chilling reminder that we are just visitors in these places. We like to think we've mapped and conquered the entire planet, but maybe we haven't. And maybe sometimes, when you wander too far down the wrong path, you come face to face with the terrifying reality that not all monsters are just campfire stories. Some are very real, waiting in the deep, silent woods. Thank you for watching Fear Files Real Nightmares. Until next time, keep your lights on and your doors locked.